Hello Wilko, nice to see you. So I appreciate that you came all the way to Yokohama to talk to me. There's a lot going on in the coming year in terms of events, the IAF, the Aikikai and so on. I guess we'll work on the assumption that in spite of the coronavirus everything takes place as planned.
Let's hope, yes.
We shall see if that's the case. But before we start talking about that, what I'd like to talk to you about is your own personal journey through Aikido.
Okay.
Because I've looked around, I've Googled your name and so on. I mean, we know each other, but actually I know very little about your past, your experience. And I thought that'd be a good idea to have you walk us through those beginnings and so on.
Yeah. Okay, I started Aikido in 1982 in the Netherlands. I'm born in the Netherlands. At that time I was under the direction of Kneska Sensei, who came over from England, and he was the technical director. It was also the time that it was a small federation, about 400 people, and if you were a Shodan, you were already a senior. So that was the climate of that time. So when I become, after 7 years everyday training Shodan, that was the level at that time, I asked my teacher, what should I do for Nidan? He said, just relax. I said, wait a moment, just relax, what does it mean? So I thought, they don't know. So at that time I was also always the uka from the passing Shihans, and that mostly it was Yokota Sensei at that time. So I got my first Hakama from Yokota Sensei. And so at a certain point he invited me to go to Hombu Dojo, and didn't know what it means. So I just bought a ticket, went to the Hombu, and with my rucksack I came down and I said, I'm here. Okay. And then they realized I supposed to stay in Yonkai Des for some time. So the first time I stayed 3 months in Hombu Dojo. At that time Kishimara Doshu was still alive. So, and I was the Deshi, so trained a lot. And I got hooked to Aikido, so I felt very at home over there. So I came back to Holland and worked my ass off to get another ticket to go again. Mm-hmm. But that time my wife got pregnant. She was very clever, because she thought if I don't do that, he will stay there. So, but I was a time also that Yamaguchi asked me to stay. He said to stay. Can you stay? I said, sorry, I cannot stay because my wife is pregnant and she lives in the Netherlands. So he said, oh yeah, you go to Christian. So it was at that time, 1990, 1991. I didn't know Christian at all. It was just, so I went to Paris and said, hello, here am I. Yamaguchi sent me, and he watched me. He said, okay, train. But it was a little bit strange, because I had to commute from Amsterdam to Paris, and I did it twice a week. I commute, so I had old Volvos and I drove them completely till the end. At that time, it was 1992, I think. I was one of the first non-French Deshi. It was the time that Bruno Gonzalez were 18 and 19, and I was already 30. And so my journey actually after Hombu Dojo, and I realized that Christian was able to make professionals. So I decided to stay a long time. So I stayed almost 10 years, I don't know anymore, till 2000 or something. And at that time more and more forums came, especially from Germany. But I was the senpai at that time. And I started my own club in, I think, 1994. And by the time I was Yondan, of Sandan or Yondan, I don't know anymore, I had a very big federation. My federation was at that time around 2,000 people, 2,500 people, I don't know anymore. I was the biggest. So I was asked to make, by the government, to organize an umbrella organization for the Netherlands, what I did in 2009. And that's a long time later. But for me it was a very important thing, because I saw that Aikido was very fragmented everywhere. So I thought it was strange, because I remember one time I was on an Embukai doing a demonstration, and the one who did the speaker said, now there's Aikido, they pretend to be harmonious, but they are the most split group I ever saw. And I was like, thank you. But I thought he's right. Yeah. he's right. So I thought that should be the case. So I decided to able to unite my country and make one umbrella organization. What I succeeded in 2009. In 2009, 5 Hombu recognized entities went in one umbrella. And to seal it, Doshu came. So he came over and etc. etc. So that was my short period. And then I realized somehow, beside the technical development as a professional, etc., it was also important to a political side. But at that time it was split. You're the technicians and the politicians. They said, yeah, but you know, if you reach a certain seniority, you should carry the weight of doing the politics. In such way as Aiki politics. That was my decision.
Well, actually, there's quite a bit to unpack in here because first, I guess the answer, the question is, you can see it both ways in terms of the harmony of Aikido. In terms of Aikido being, I think, by design, something that's supposed to be open to many interpretations.
Yeah.
So, in this sense, perhaps it makes sense that everybody does their little thing in their own corner. But of course, if you think about Aikido in terms of something joining energies and so on, then it makes sense to unify them. And I always wonder what's really the best for perhaps not for the discipline itself, but for the practitioners. Is everybody doing their own thing, by themselves and so on, or gathering? Because if you gather those people, I guess there are a number of questions that are going to be arising, such as, do you centralize grading systems? Who is representative whenever there's something happening?
No, but I think for me it was like the same when you watch the development of a country, for instance. In old days you had clans, and every clan had a flag, and everyone's very happy to have his own flag. And what clans are doing, they fight each other, right? And one day somebody says, let's make a nation, right? And unite all the clans to a nation. So in Aikido, it requires a certain maturity to come to that. When you're young, Sandan, Yondan, you feel your own power. You want your own flag, and my flag is the best, or something like that. And when you're a little bit mature, you realize, well, there are other flags too, and maybe they are good neighbors, right? And also you decide, well, if Aikido is a spiritual quest for yourself, there's a kind of liberty in it. And if there are more Hombu recognized entities, every Hombu recognized entity should have its own lineage with the Hombu instead of grading. But it doesn't mean you cannot cooperate with each other. And the cooperation can be a joint seminar, or it can be in the case of a common license system for the teachers. So there are many fields you cooperate, and especially for the young generation. They don't care which flag you carry. Yeah. So the kids want to just do Aikido together. So I think there are many elements, and now I am, let's say, in IAF, I see different stages of development in each country. Some countries are still in the stage of having their own clan with their flags. And some start to think maybe we can unite, right? So that's, I think that's more a kind of matureness in Aikido. Of course, if that's the case, that matureness will also be cultivated by Japan. But some case, Japan, if you watch the organization chart of Japan, you see a pandemonium of different federations, right? So watching that and watching the history of Japan, where there were a lot of civil war-like situations, right? It took also a long time here to get together, right? So if you approach from that side, I have a positive feeling about that. One day everyone realizes you should work more together, right? I truly believe that that the only way you can communicate and do relation stuff on federation if you train together. So if you're common based by training, there's automatically you create respect. So that's also my philosophy now. We should train together, and then things happen by itself, actually, right?
The thing with Aikido, like you said that some countries are more mature than others and so on. I mean, the one that comes to mind, and I may get some grief for saying that, but France, being one of the countries where Aikido was the first exported, still has that clear divide between two major groups and many other groups as well. and I don't see that, you know, changing anytime soon.
It is changing, actually. Yes, because of course, I remember the time that that Aikido from the well-respected Shihan Tamron was called unique, and then unique was more set in the sense as being different as from Aikikai. And Christian Tichet was somehow aligned with Christian, but was not in Japanese, right? So you had these huge two massive federations. So Christian size federation was 30,000, other was 20,000, so in the thousands, right? But at one point they were summoned by the government to do something together, so to create a united federation. This was, of course, with the exemption of the international representation and with the grading already. So now, for the first time, I heard talks that they think about, and the time frame can be different, maybe now or 4 or 5 years later, that UVA becomes the member of the IAF. But in that case, with the strong condition that the history of Christian Tichet is being, let's say, valued, and that he becomes the technical representative for the country on the international scene, because he is the first Hachidan non-Japanese. And that time, that is only possible since Tamora passed away 10 years ago. So there's no need anymore for this super flag behavior. I call it like that. But everyone was very devoted and I think with the true sense to Tamura Sensei. With the same case for Tichet. And I think that is changing. Especially now also that they see that if they don't cooperate or don't do that, you see many more flags splitting everywhere, right? So, especially in the case of France, where you have a government who is very strongly organized and actually expect that Aikido should be on one roof, well, that gives you some strong incentive to change, let's say it like that.
Interestingly, if you look at the history of French Aikido, perhaps, I don't know much about the Netherlands, but compare, let's say, to English Aikido, right?
Yeah.
France has a sheer majority of practitioners that would recognize themselves within the umbrella of the Aikikai. Whereas if you go to England, you can have a lot of people practicing Yoshinkan Aikido, Tomiki Aikido. And so here we're talking about grouping people of Aikikai lineage, right?
Yeah.
Have you experienced any incidents of groups from different lineage grouping together? For instance, in the Netherlands, are we only talking about Aikikai related groups, or?
No, there are two umbrella organizations in the Netherlands. One is for the Aikikai, the homo-recognized entities, who are together member for the IAF, and that at the moment are 7 out of 10 homo-recognized entities. But in the government, there is also another umbrella organization with all styles. So we have Tomiki Aikido, we have Tenryu Aikido, we have Yosenkan. Of course, the majority of the population doing Aikido, 90% is like Aikikai, but 10% other styles. And they work together with a system that the instructor license is for everyone the same. Of course, to keep the relation intact that Aikikai is Aikikai, right? We have a separate umbrella organization for only Aikikai. And that can happen in Holland, because from the history in Holland, we have the Catholics and the Protestants and the socialists and the communists and the state. So there are different silos of work, right? And they learn to cooperate somehow together, right? Now, if you go to Britain, where at that time Chiba was the main influence of Aikido, after Chiba died and he left actually to America and give the stick to Kneska Sensei, it became very fragmented. And so you need, in the beginning, normally, if there's a very strong leader like Chiba or Tamura or Yamada, you see a time that everything is progressing very well, and there's also a limit to that. And you see always that some point when they left or they die, you see the splitting coming.
I mean, it's a whole government system that changes when those old sensei leave, because who are you gonna send to replace them? There is nobody that could be sent. So by
no, but
default,
that's also, let's say, right. But it's also, of course, the current situation of Aikido itself, because of course in the beginning they're all disciples of our sensei, right? So they have this beginning spirit. The torch is alive in them. But 10 years later from now, nobody's left anymore who has been a disciple of our sensei direct. So that is a different challenge, right? Because if you want to survive Aikido, we have to find different ways how we can maintain this torch everywhere, right? And it means also that there are less strong leaders, so we have to find a way to cooperate together if Aikido want to continue to exist.
So we'll be talking about less of a vertical organization and more horizontal one by default.
No, but the vertical line can be still very strong towards, let's say, the Aikikai itself, the grading system. But the way you have to operate in your country, the way you treat your neighbors, that's a horizontal issue. And that the Aikikai more and more is also aware of that should happen. They tend to, in the beginning first, have only vertical lines, but now they see that to be only vertical creates a conflict by itself. So now you see also a tendency that they insist that they cooperate. And I think that's the only way we can survive in the future, actually. Otherwise we get smaller and smaller silos everywhere.
Right.
But smaller and smaller size means that the quality goes down very quickly. Because you know yourself, if you train only in your own dojo with maybe 30 people, after some time you know each other completely, how you move, how you roll, you fall. And the progression comes if you go outside and come back, right? You have to fresh blood exchange with other people. So that's what I see also now coming up in the lens, that the young generation, they learn now from the generations now 6, 7 down, and they don't care more what lineage they are, and they train together. They're less busy with flag they take, but the downside of it, by doing that, it's very difficult for them to understand the lineage. That you need a loyalty and trust relation for a long time to develop yourself in Aikido. If that disappears, which is also a kind of vertical line, right? We diminish or disqualify Aikido by itself. So the new generation, let's say in France or whatever, in France there are 6 dans who have never been to Homburg, right? That exists, right? So what creates a different dynamic by itself, right? But it means if you don't create that notion of vertical in your own dojo or your own federation, at the end of the day you can keep not your dojo or your federation together. That's what I see, actually. So let's say for me, the vertical line and the horizontal line, what was normally the way to describe it, is it can mean like a cross, right? And in Christianity, you take the cross you can carry and what does not suffocate you. But there are 2 kinds of crosses. The one is about the here, Roman one. And there's one here, right? So that kind of symbolic learns me that the intersection of the vertical line and the horizontal line, at that point, that the new leadership, somebody you can combine the 2 of them. And that, of course, let's say in the old times, some good, very excellent Japanese teachers were not able to take care of the horizontal line, right? So that wasn't reason to split. So that's, and the modern generation, they expect you to communicate more and more, right? So there you see that also in that sense, the notion I can change to go more in communication with others.
When we see, I think when you talk about communication these days, on a number of issues, this is becoming like a real landmine with social networks and how huge proportions of anything can take. I'm not too sure that the Aikikai necessarily realizes or puts the forms that that had to be put to communicate on a wide, big scale. And my question is, does the IAF have any say in Aikikai communication when it tends to be intended to go worldwide?
No.
Okay.
Although we advise. And just a matter of fact, nowadays all the social medias can spread around information very quick, and it's always a search of what is true information, what is not true, and what is valid, not valid. So I hate forums in the sense because you can easily deliver your opinion without any background of it that you really have ground in it. So for me, it is not a good way. But for instance, we're not in the position now as General Secretary of the IAF. We're now busy to make a new website because the website is outdated in technology. And one of the EIDs we know what we present next week to the Aikikai is that we give an open window for the Aikikai in our website, so that they somehow can use our website also. Because what we see, of what I see, is that the way the Aikikai use social media is, let's say, old-fashioned, right? And I'm already old-fashioned because I'm 60. I'm not in the generation of social media, but I can see that they have difficulty to modernize it in such a way that is like accessible on a professional level, how you could use social media. I mean, like this interview is a kind of tool to do that. And I think that's the only way for the future how to survive also Aikido. We have to be visible on screens, but what we deliver as on the screen should be of quality.